March Madness is upon us. And couple that with the NBA season is going on, actually going to the playoffs. A better way to bet on those games and games in other sports like the Premier League and everything else, or even Major League Soccer, than betus.com, where you can get 125% of the sign-up bonus, which is up to $2,500 by using the promo code TKT for the Klown Times. So what are these other perks here? You can bet on the go. You can bet anytime, anywhere on your mobile device. You get fast pass, so you get paid immediately every single time. And last but not least, you can you could do live betting where you can bet during the game, getting the early and the best lines. Again, use my promo code TKT for the Klown Times to get up to 125% of the sign-up bonus, which is up to $2,500. So again, not to sound like a broken record, but go to betus.com where the game begins. Welcome to tonight's March Madness edition of the Klown Podcast. I'm Scott Burks. Please check me out at www.theklowntimes.net. That is what this website here is for. That's from my sports blog. You can check me on Facebook as well. So your laptop, desktop, smartphone, wherever it may be. Please check me out there. Just do a search, type in the search one, type in the Klown Times in the search one, you'll find me there as well. And also, please continue to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We're over 350 followers. Well, I should say subscribers, as if this is Twitter, right? But I have over 350 subscribers. So again, I celebrate the largest small victories. Just kicked this thing off like about a little over a year ago, a year or some change ago. So far so good, but just keep the likes and comments and shares and more importantly, subscribers coming, and that'll be cool. And one last thing, speaking of which, get the merch, cafepress.com. Please search for the Klown Time Sports. The link will be in the description under this video when this all said and done. You'll find the gear there as well. So I mentioned it's March Madness. I got my ACC buddies back, Atlantic Coast Conference, the conference of our youth. So might as well introduce my man, Jeffrey Fann, and also Matthew Warner, the co-creators of the All Things Sports Discussion, the ACC Sports blog. So they're back to talk about the ACC tournament, what's going on live right now at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. So Jeff, Matthew, welcome back. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, doing well. Glad to be back on, Scott.
Doing good.
Right on.
Thanks.
So speaking of not so doing good, we talked about us off camera a little bit. The school that I grew up maybe 10 or 12 miles from, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. They were coming into tonight. They were kind of a classic bubble team, if you will. They were they were said to be the last ones in as far as the last buys, which means that they wouldn't have to play in the playing game, but they were like a projected 10 seed. But that was before they inexplicably lost to Boston College in tonight's second round ACC tournament. I'm a little bit sad because I think it's going to impact Wake Forest in a huge way because, again, they were the last ones, the last buys, and projected as a 10 seed. I don't know what the hell is going to happen to them now. I mean, I was looking at the schedule earlier. They don't have many impressive wins. I mean, they have some Power 5 wins, if you will. Northwestern, but come on, no, it's Northwestern. Oregon State, and the rest of the outer conference has been mainly, I don't want to call it group of fighters because this is not football, but mid-majors. So, and small schools. So, as always, Jeff, I'm kicking it to you, man. How concerned, if you're a Wake Forest fan, how concerned should you be after the loss to Boston College?
I think you should be pretty concerned. They are. I'm usually pretty bullish on the ACC teams, even in a down year.
Right.
So I still think they're not totally out, but they are squarely on the bubble. And if there's a couple, a handful of bid stealers out there, they're going to be really sweating it on Selection Sunday. I think even in the best scenario right now, they're probably one of the last 4 in, or just missing the bye. They're definitely one of the last 5 teams. And when you look at their 23 win total, you think, oh, even in the ACC Power 5, 23 wins, that's going to get you in.
Right.
And I remember about 10 years ago, Virginia Tech. I know this is going to be a rough memory for Matthew. They had a 23 win team, and their resumes are eerily similar. And that Virginia Tech team got left out. That Virginia Tech team was a 4 seed in the ACC tournament, played a 14 seed Miami, lost. They also lacked a number of quality wins that year. This was Wake Forest, 23 wins, 5th. They were a 5 seed, losing to, I think Boston College was a 13. No, they were 12. Was it 12 or 13? But anyways, they were a high double-digit seed. And you look down Wake Forest's resume, and in a down ACC, they got swept by Miami. They didn't beat Duke. Like you mentioned, in the out of conference, they had the Northwestern win. Okay, Oregon State, that was a 3-win Pac-12 team. Amazing, kind of amazing for Oregon State, though. It was an Elite 8 team last year and won 3 games this year. But I think Wake Forest is going to be sweating, especially now. You look at Virginia Tech and Clemson. That's another team they're competing with, and at the moment, Virginia Tech's up 14.
Right.
Virginia Tech wins another game or two, and that's going to be your 5th team from the ACC. I think Wake Forest is in a little bit of trouble. I think they're going to be sweating it out Sunday night, and I don't feel good about their chances. Once you start running the numbers, the numbers just don't look very good for them.
Right. And again, we mentioned that out of conference schedule. It's not that impressive. Not that impressive at all. And we mentioned ACC having an unusually characteristic down year. So speaking of Virginia Tech, Matt, so we talked about this earlier, like Virginia Tech, they're putting some work right now in in their game right now. But I have Virginia Tech, if they were to win tonight, I think they were projected before tonight as one of the first 4 out right now. So would it take 2 wins, 3 wins, or 3 wins in the ACC tournament to get them off of that, move them from the first 4 out to the last 4 in, maybe? So what do you think about that?
Okay, so let me just go back to a couple questions here, because I agree with Jeff, with Jeff, with what Jeff said about Wake Forest. I do think that prior Virginia Tech team and this Wake team both were among the top 64 teams in the country. I think Wake is now, and I think they both should get in. I don't think that Wake. I think Wake probably may be looking out right now, but I think they both are of that caliber and should have been in the tournament. Now, as far as Virginia Tech is concerned, Jeff is more of a numbers guru than me on this, but I honestly think Virginia Tech has to win 3 games to make itself feel pretty good. I actually think Virginia Tech probably needs to make it to the semis. Okay. Make it past the semis. Now, I could be wrong. Xavier, before this podcast today, right? Before our podcast today, Xavier also lost. So that was another team. That was another team that lost. And so that may help out Virginia Tech. Maybe Virginia Tech just needs 2 wins and could get to the semis. And maybe there are, but who knows? I mean, but I know that Virginia Tech can't lose to Clemson tonight, and it probably would be in better shape if it beat Notre. Is it Notre Dame that Virginia Tech would have next? I think it's Notre Dame that Virginia Tech would have next in the bracket.
That's all right, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that it would well suit Virginia Tech to also defeat Notre Dame in that next game, because I think that they probably need to get I think they actually need 2 more quad 1 wins to help them out. So, but there's first things first, right? Defeating Clemson tonight, I think is what's got to be on the menu. And like I said, I know we talked about this before I came on the podcast. And I mentioned it on Twitter last night too, that they had to go to Kivaluma, they had to go to Justin Mutz, and they had to keep repeating that formula every time down the court, because I felt that they didn't go inside enough and just settled on a bunch of outside shots when they played Clemson the first time, when in fact you've got the ACC's an ACC second all ACC team player on your team in Kivaluma. So anyway, that's all I have to say there. Thanks.
Well, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. I just want to chime in on. I think it's absolutely imperative that Virginia Tech, beats Clemson. If they don't beat Clemson, and right now they're in pretty good shape, but there's a lot of time left. Okay, right. No chance to get in if they lose tonight. I think the way I've looked at it is I think a win tonight puts them on the bubble, and it's 50-50 at that point. But I think I'm a little more optimistic than Matthew, as I think a second win over Notre Dame gets them into the field, and I think they do benefit from Wake Forest losing, because I don't think there's a scenario now where the ACC can get 6 teams in. I thought there was a possibility, especially when before Wake Forest, but I think we're still looking at 5, and I think Virginia Tech, if they beat Notre Dame, I think they'll squeeze in. Of course, making it to the 3, winning a third game will lock them in, but I feel like 2 is going to get them in. 1 is bubble, and not winning tonight is absolutely out.
I've been burned so many times that
that's true. That's fair. That's definitely fair.
I mean, it's crazy, but speaking of Virginia being squad, how about the University of Virginia? They beat Duke, they upset Duke earlier this year. But they've been, it's going to be weird seeing Virginia. Virginia is like the next 4 out right now, right? And it's weird seeing them on the other side of the bubble, right? They're only a few years removed from a national title. So, how stunning, Matthew, to see Virginia on that side, and how Virginia's season's going this year. You could point to a lot of things, but why did Virginia just stumble the way they did this season when they're usually one of the strongest teams, not only ACC, but in the country?
Well, I can give you a couple reasons, but I think Virginia usually has a dead-eye 3-point shooter.
Right.
And they don't. Jeff probably knows this better than I do, but I don't think that they have as good at outside shooting as they've had in the past. I remember when they played, I'll give you a good example. They came down to Blacksburg, in the Commonwealth Cup rivalry game, right? And Virginia Tech just gave them free reign to shoot from 3-point land pretty much the entire game, and they just couldn't hit shots.
Right.
And if you can't score, it causes you problems. And this kind of reminds me of some of Tony's first few teams that he had, where the offense wasn't as great as it was, and perhaps that has something to do with the level of talent. I don't think that there are any NBA players on Virginia's team right now. You guys probably know that. Guys can probably chime in on this with me as well. But I just don't happen to see that level of talent on the team. So I think that's a second factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
there's no Ty Jerome, no Kyle Guy walking through the door on this team. No DeAndre Hunters, Maktar Diakite. It's a pretty. Honestly, I think Tony Bennett. The coach is responsible for the talent on the team, but I think a lesser coach would, probably lost double-digit games in the ACC than Tony Bennett. They're really not very talented. I know they had K. Clark and Reese Beckman. Beckman is a tremendous defender, but like Matthew said, they just really don't shoot the ball very well. And I mean, even for them to get into the bubble, it kind of speaks to how good Tony Bennett is. I mean, they won at Duke, they beat Providence, so they've had moments, but that net ranking of theirs is just too far down the list. The Florida State loss, the last second loss there,
Yeah.
just kill their chances. I mean, and they kind of had that game with Virginia Tech that was kind of like a loser leave town type of game, and they lost there. So just they're dangerous in the ACC tournament, but they're just too far back, I think, to get in, and that's what Tony Bennett's going to have to do. I mean, he's got the reputation and the history to say, hey, I can get guys in the NBA even with that offense, and he's just going to have to find. I mean, Matthew's spot on. They're going to have to find shooters in the future. We know his style can win.
Right, we're seeing
But
it.
we've seen it. I mean, it's been super successful. But I mean, if you can't shoot, there's nothing you can do, no matter how good your defense is, because it's still at the end. It's about being able to score in college basketball. So,
Right.
I think Tony Bennett's too good of a coach to have this be more than a one blip year. But
Yeah.
he's got to get some shooters.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so. I mean, you probably think what might have been, because remember during the Big Ten ACC Challenge when they hosted Iowa and they lost at the last second.
Yep.
And that turned out to be a damn good Iowa squad.
Yep.
So
Sure
that would have been a huge win on their resume. And then, I mean, they had some inexplicable losses earlier this year as well. So it's something else. They lost to Navy, crying out loud. I mean, they lost to James Madison.
Yep.
They got their asses kicked by Clemson at home. I mean, it's just crazy. So it's going to be tough for Virginia. You hate to say it, you hate to see it, but it kind of is what it is. I think if they were to hold on against Iowa, I think they would be one of the last four in, because again, Iowa is proven to be a damn good team and out of the Big Ten, but it is what it is. So they have to do the best they can. They probably have to win out. They probably have to win the tournament. I don't think them get into the title game against Duke or whoever would be enough. I think they have to win the whole thing to be safe. On the safe side.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, at the very least, they have to get to Saturday, but I think they probably got to win the whole thing too.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of teams that could make a run, every year, this time of year, Syracuse makes a run. Sometimes it'll be in the tournament, in the NCAA tournament, sometimes the ACC tournament, but what have you, the last few years, they made decent runs, right? Because I think they made the Sweet 16 last year.
Right.
Yeah, on the late run, they beat West Virginia to get to the Sweet 16 last year. But I mean, they curb stomped Florida State today by damn near 40 points. They finished the season under 500, I think, for the first time under Jim Boeheim, which is another like a addition to Virginia doing not so hot this year. This has been a bizarro world for the ACC basketball. But they're playing in Brooklyn, and more on the ACC tournament being in Brooklyn in a moment. We'll get to that later. But given that it's playing in Brooklyn, New York, given that Syracuse fans are probably filling out the joint in Brooklyn, being that it's instead of New York, what's the realistic ceiling for Syracuse? I mean, can they ride Matthew, the hometown crowd, to like a deep run? I mean, they obviously have to win the ACC tournament to even qualify for this NCAA tournament. So, but what is the ceiling right now? Is it possible for Syracuse to make one of their miraculous March Madness runs, or is this pretty much the next round, whoever they play, it's pretty much a wrap?
They're losing to Duke in part because I'm sure you guys both saw the news here, right? But Buddy Boeheim is not going to play the next game because he got suspended for the next game.
Oh yeah, for hitting
So
the
he will
kid
not.
from
So
Florida
he
State,
will
yeah.
not be, since he's not playing. I'm thinking that. Well, first of all, I would have picked Duke to beat them anyway
Right.
because they have just as. I mean, I hate to say it, the NYC area is basically the Duke alumni base too, right? So they're going to have a lot of fans there, and I shouldn't say I hate to say it. I mean, good for Duke for having a large alumni base in New York, but they're gonna lose this next game, right? Because Buddy Boeheim, in my opinion, is an NBA player. I think he's a pretty good player. I mean, I think as you go towards next year, to answer your question, because I kind of thought you were going there, Scott. I mean, if all of their players come back next year, they could actually be pretty good. They could actually be pretty good in ACC play because they have a lot of older players on that team. It just has the feel of a bunch of 23, 24-year-olds on that team. And they could actually be pretty good in the 2022, 2023 season. But I don't see them going any farther the next game. I think that they're done when they play Duke. That's all I got there. Thanks.
Yeah, but let me ask you something. I know Buddy Boeheim and Jimmy Boeheim, they're both seniors, if I'm not mistaken. Are they twins? I mean, are they twins, or are they like a year apart or whatever? Because they're both seniors. I was just curious about that. I know they're brothers, but are they like twins?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think they're a year or a couple of years apart.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm checking their bios. Because I know Buddy Boeheim, I never heard of Jimmy Boeheim. Yeah, that's not saying, but yeah, I was just wondering. So I was like, wait a minute. I knew there was a Jimmy Boeheim, but I didn't know they were both seniors. But to Jeff's point, to Matthew's point, Jeff. Next year, like, I'm sure Buddy Boeheim is out of eligibility, right? I think this is it for him, correct?
I think so.
Yeah. So, Buddy Boeheim could play. He might be an NBA player. I mean, he could play. He's 6'6". He can put the ball on the floor. He could score. He could get his own shot, and did it at the highest, level in college. And he did in the tournament last year. I think his tournament run last year could kind of solidified that he could be an NBA player. Especially when he was against West Virginia. I think it was when he was bragging when he had that hot start. And when he said, like, the camera caught him saying, "I'm a walking bucket," which I thought was swagalicious. But how much longer do you think Jim Boeheim, the coach, has? I mean, they could have a good team if everyone comes back next year. To Matthew's point. But
let me add something too, Scott. I'm sorry, I apologize. He it sounds to me like he has petitioned Buddy Boeheim for another year of eligibility. So anyway,
Okay.
that's okay. What go ahead.
No, it's okay. No, that's cool. But that could even help Syracuse more next season, because Buddy Boeheim, obviously is the obvious best player on that squad. That could say as much as to the rest of the talent on Syracuse's roster. But I don't know who they have coming in next season. But that good potential mix with the veterans that they have, they could realistically make a bit of noise next season. But back to the coaching question, given that Coach K, this is his last season coaching, his good friend, and another good friend of Boeheim's, Roy Williams, retired last season, kind of makes you wonder if Boeheim is going to be going sooner rather than later, as far as him just walking off to the sunset on his own. So I personally give Jim Boeheim 2 more years. Next season and the season after that at the most.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's got max 2 years, and he's already said that they have a transition plan in place.
Mhm.
I actually think next year will be his last year. I think he wanted to get through his sons playing for him, and then so either they may return next year, or he might kind of work through that transition. But I agree with you. I think it's max 2 years, and I kind of feel like next year will be his last year, but that I don't think there's any way he goes beyond 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. It's gonna be weird, man. Not only ACC, but college basketball as a whole. Roy Williams is gone. Coach K is gonna be gone after this season, and Jim Boeheim may be gone soon.
Yeah,
It's gonna
that's
be
true.
weird.
It's going to look different too. And I mean, guys like Tom Izzo's not that young, and Calipari's up there. I mean, they've
Right.
still got time, but I mean, we're definitely kind of in that transition period now, with new coaches coming in, and some of the old guard going out.
Wow. Yeah. So Matthew, how weird is it too to see, speaking of Coach K, that he's on this, that not only is this is it for him, but for him to lose his last game at Cameron to North Carolina. That was hilarious.
It was sort of ironic. Yeah, it was sort of ironic. I mean, shout out to the Mr. Baycott for playing a hell of a game for North
Yes.
Carolina.
He's
I
a
mean,
monster.
he's just an outstanding player, and he's going to find himself in some NBA circles here at the end of the season, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was obviously, I was kind of crazy because I think there were some people that paid $1 million for like 3 or 4 tickets or something like that, and for that last game.
The cheapest seats were 50 grand, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I was like,
More expensive ones, but I think some of the cheap seats were 5 grand. I'm sorry. Some of the cheap seats were 5 grand.
Sure.
for
I
his
mean,
last
it was,
game. It's crazy.
that's, yeah, it was it's pretty interesting.
But
Pretty interesting.
But I'll tell you what, Jeff, for the other side, I think this win, that Carolina win, endeared Hubert Davis. Not that he's not already endeared to the fan base, because they know who he is. He's a Carolina guy, born and bred. He played in the NBA, had a pretty solid NBA career on top of that, in addition to a spectacular college basketball career. But I'm pretty sure this win, Coach K's last game at Cameron, not only to lose to Hubert Davis, to get beat down by Carolina, Hubert Davis has to be the man now at UNC. And he has to be the toast of the town in Chapel Hill. I mean, he has pretty much, if he hadn't done so already, officially endeared himself to the fan base with that win over Coach K in his final game at Cameron at that.
Oh yeah, that's the game he won over the fan base. I mean, there'd been like rumblings already from UNC fans that maybe he was, overwhelmed coaching the Tar Heels, and they've been so inconsistent. And one game out, they'd look like a Sweet 16 team, and the next game out, like with the loss at Pitt at home, they look like a team that'd go out in the first round of the NIT. But
yeah,
he really kind of rallied that team after that Pitt loss. I mean, they go on the road, they beat a really solid, Virginia Tech team, and then that performance against Duke. I mean, like Matthew said, Baycock was outstanding. I mean, that looked like a Roy Williams North Carolina team. They just ran Duke off the floor in the second half. They ran him out of the gym, and I mean, such an emotional game for Duke. And even when Duke made some of their runs in the first half, and North Carolina just answered. They got within 2 at the half, and right at that time, you kind of thought, North Carolina's got a shot at this. And I think when you get to the NCAA tournament, they are going to be a team to me like a Alabama, that's going to probably be in that 6 to 10 seed range that no 2 or 3 seed wants any part of, because you have no idea what they're capable of, but they have the talent to play with just about anybody in the country. early in the year when they played Michigan before, Michigan went all sideways. They ran Michigan out
They
of,
beat the hell out of Michigan. Yeah.
yeah, they beat the daylights out of Michigan. That's still that was a top 10 Michigan team,
Right.
early in the season.
Right.
And yeah, I think North Carolina is going to be one of those extremely dangerous teams that if they get a right matchup where they can use that front line and they shoot the ball well, I mean, they can knock off one of those 2 or 3 seeds. And like you said, Scott, I think Hubert Davis, you knock off Duke on
Yeah.
Coach K's last night, which
Yes.
another thing is that really revitalized that rivalry. I mean, it's always, a huge deal, but it'd been 2 or 3 years since it really kind of caught like national attention. And I mean, everyone was talking about that game for a 2 or 3 days afterwards. They said it was the highest rated college basketball game in 3 years. So I mean, that was like vintage Duke, North Carolina.
Exactly. But one team, I can't believe I forgot about the squad. Speaking of upstarts, in any normal year, a team like Notre Dame winning 14 wins in the conference would garner them a lot of love, but they've been flying under the radar. Seemingly. I mean, the thing is that if you look at their resume, they finished 15-5. They're the 3rd seed in the tournament, in the ACC conference tournament, but they tied for 2nd place with North Carolina. They finished a game behind Duke in the standings, and they beat Kentucky at home. They probably would have would like that Indiana loss back, but still, to beat Kentucky at home, which is a damn good Kentucky squad, they like to beat Carolina. I'm looking at the wins there. They won at Miami. Just pretty decent wins. And any other normal year, if the conference is a little bit wasn't so down, I think Notre Dame would get a lot more love. But it's just weird that Notre Dame is finished 15-5 and not many people are talking about them, Jeff. So I don't know what's up with that, but I guess it goes. Is it because the ACC is down that folks are not talking about Notre Dame as much as folks would in a normal up year in the ACC?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with with the struggles of the ACC, and then they had an opportunity. I think when Duke went up to South Bend, that was an opportunity for Notre Dame to kind of grab everyone's attention, and they just came out with an incredibly flat performance in that game.
Right.
But I mean, people who've been watching Notre Dame all this year know that that's a quality basketball team. Like you said, they beat Kentucky. They were right there in it with Indiana. I mean, they've got good guards on that team. Goodwin's been good. Pretense Hub is on, they've got the guard play to be a pretty dangerous team in March too. And for the better part of the year, they've been the ACC's 2nd best team. Until North Carolina just kind of took off here and Miami faded, but they've been really consistent most of the year. But I think in large part the 2 things with the ACC being down and then the missed opportunity when Duke went to South Bend playing so poorly in that game kind of left them a little bit off the radar.
Right.
So, can I also add here too? I mean, Notre Dame is probably getting kind of publicity that they would because Wake Forest, who was picked almost near the bottom of the conference, has done so well this year, 1. And 2, the same thing with Miami. They were also picked toward the bottom of the conference.
Yep.
And they're also doing very well. I mean, I think Notre Dame preseason clocked in at 8th, if I'm not mistaken. And those other 2 teams were sitting there at double digits in the preseason rankings and ended up having buys. So I think that's also part of it.
Yeah. So one last thing before I let you guys go. Duke, obviously one of the best teams in the country. They got wins against Kentucky, Gonzaga. They ran against Ohio State after that Gonzaga win. in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. But Matthew, I'll start with you, then you kick it back to Jeff. Who do you guys have? Duke, well, two questions. Duke or the field? And if you choose the field, what must happen for whoever you have picked from the field to upset Duke in the conference tournament? What must they do to beat Duke?
Oh, I'm picking Duke in the ACC tournament. I think that, I mean, I don't see any other possibility unless they were to put, unless the Hokies were to, end up going on a tear and hitting 90% from 3-point land where they're just not missing anything. And Duke decides to play the same way that they did in the first half against Virginia Tech, and just decides that they should play lazy on defense and not looking out for each other on the backdoor cuts and that sort of thing, or deciding that they just don't need to box out if you're talking about playing a Carolina, that sort of thing. So, I mean, but Duke, by all accounts, I mean, if you saw, let's go to that second half of the game in Cameron this year, because I don't think they wanted to go. Jeff and Scott, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they would have wanted to come to Castle. I'll just be fair about that. I don't think Duke would have wanted to come to Castle because it can be a very intimidating road environment for a lot of teams. And I don't think they necessarily would want that. But, that's the Duke has to just beat itself, I guess, is my point. If they want to lose games, they have to take a half off. But if they play the way they did in the second half of the game versus Virginia Tech, if they play the same way that they have in a lot of their monster victory, top 25 victories this year, there's no team out there that can beat them, I would say, in the ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament. If they decide that they want to turn it on every single possession, nobody can beat Duke.
That's fair. Totally fair. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely by a healthy margin have the highest ceiling in the ACC. I mean, they're probably one of the 2 or 3 most talented teams in all of college basketball. And their issue is that and this has been Duke's issue the last several years, is they're just not very good on the ball perimeter defenders. I mean, Miami got into the lane against them in that game that they lost early in the season. North Carolina's guards got in on them, and then they were setting up Baycock, and they can go as far as their defense can take them, because offensively and talent-wise, they're as good as anyone in the country. I mean, they're capable of winning the national title,
right?
But I just don't know if they have, the capability on defense, to put it together for 6 games. I mean, think if they end up in a run where they're playing, they got to play a Kentucky team in the Sweet 16, and then somebody like a UCLA or an Auburn team in the Final Four, and then Gonzaga again. I mean, I just don't know if Duke can defensively hold up against teams of that caliber in the long haul. But they're definitely talented enough to play and beat any of those teams. And for them to lose in the ACC tournament, if they play their best, they're not losing. There's no question about that. But I mean, we've seen it this year that they've been caught off guard, kind of shell shocked when teams have been able to withstand their runs. And I mean, I look at North Carolina as probably the team that they're going to be brimming with confidence right now.
Oh, sure.
As the most, if they're going to lose, it would be to North Carolina. But I really like Duke in this tournament. I think they're going to be on a mission to try to recover from that loss on Saturday and build some momentum in the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to get Coach K his ACC title.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's beat. I got Duke. I don't think anyone from the field, if everyone is playing at their best, I don't think anyone holds accountable to Duke. Talent-wise, coaching, whatever. No one can beat Duke if Duke is on. So I teased it earlier, I forgot to mention this, but we're going to close on this. I mentioned that the tournament's been played in Brooklyn, the Barclays Center. People have been complaining about the tournament getting away from Greensboro. They cycle it every year, right? It's cyclical every year, right? Every few years is Greensboro, every few years is Brooklyn, every few years it's been Washington, D.C. I don't know where it's going to be next, or in Charlotte as well. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be. I think is it going to be in Brooklyn? I don't know if you guys know it's going to be Brooklyn next year or.
What was it? DC next year?
Oh, okay. So it'll be 1 year. Okay, so it won't be 2 years here, 2 years there.
I'm not sure. Actually, I got to look that up.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'll talk it through. But basically, is there like I believe that since the ACC spreads from near the top of the East Coast to Florida, I don't think anything wrong with the. Then again, I'm not one of those traditional old guy, get the hell off my lawn type of guy, but I think that there's nothing wrong with the tournament, the ACC tournament being moved around because it's along the Eastern Seaboard because again, it's a huge footprint. I mean, I wouldn't mind, in addition to Brooklyn, DC, Greensboro, and Charlotte, I wouldn't mind seeing it played in Atlanta. They used to play at the old Omni back in the day.
Right.
I wouldn't mind it being played in Philadelphia. I wouldn't mind it because it's in that footprint, right? I wouldn't mind.
It's in Greensboro next year.
It's in Greensboro next year. Okay.
Yep.
But I don't mind. I wouldn't mind it being played in like I don't want to say Boston because that could be a Boston College home crowd thing, but still, I mean, I'm one of those guys, Jeff, is like, I'm not wedded to one location. If you want the ACC to succeed, since they spread their boundaries like a tentacle, right? I mean, you get there in all over the Eastern Seaboard, then parts of the Midwest even. So spread around, right? Pass it around, like a blunt. Pass it around to different cities, different major markets, and let the bad boy grow. Let everyone see how great the ACC tournament is, down years or not. So, yeah. So Jeff, do you think they should stick to Greensboro, or should they pick a location, or just pass it around to all the major markets in the footprint?
I mean, I guess I'm kind of a traditionalist. I do think you've got to come back to Greensboro every now and then, and they should be in the rotation. But other than that, I mean, I definitely think it makes sense to hit the big markets, and I think they're starting to do that. Going from Florida to Atlanta. Charlotte is a very popular location. When it was in DC, it did extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn. The only thing when they have it up in New York, what I hear from people who've been to these ACC tournaments all over is when they go to New York, they say, well, what are you here for if you're out of town? And if they say the ACC tournament, that it seems like a lot of the people in New York aren't even really sure about the tournament.
Like a
but if it's in if it's in Greensboro or Charlotte, it's like a really huge event. So you don't want to kind of lose that by spreading yourself too thin. But
sure.
So I think you do have to kind of keep the regional base, in the Carolinas. You definitely don't want to, not have it in Greensboro I think it should be held in Greensboro at least every 3 years, and then you can move it around to those bigger sites. I mean, definitely when it was in DC, it did very, very well.
It did great in DC, yeah.
It did really good in DC, not so great when it was in Florida. It did well it did pretty well in Atlanta, and I think, by the time the bigger games start occurring, it'll be fine in Brooklyn. It's probably more about just having like higher ranked teams, but yeah, I think moving it up and down the footprint definitely makes sense, but don't forget about Greensboro.
Right. How about you, Matt?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there.
That's okay. It happens.
You know what? I think I don't really have too much more to add than what Jeff said. I mean, I loved that it was in DC, right? Because there are a lot. I mean, this is an international city, right? And
Right.
I mean, and international, national, whatever you want to say. There's a lot of alumni from every school, every ACC school in this area. But I think you've got to have it in Greensboro, like Jeff said. I think that's really important. And I mean, Charlotte, the one, and I think Atlanta is good too. It probably didn't work out so good when it was, I think it was in Florida in the past. It probably didn't work out so great when it was there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I think the ACC's got it down in terms of the rotation. But I think you've got to keep it. You got to keep it within the. You got to at least have it I would say in either Charlotte or Greensboro. Probably a good. I would say 50 to 75% of the time. That's just my take there. I'm a traditionalist.
Yeah, you like get off my lawn. But I would say this. I would say if I was an advisor to Jim Phillips, your ACC commissioner for a day, I would advise him starting next year. It'll be in Greensboro anyway, right? So do the following rotation: Greensboro, Charlotte, Washington D.C., Brooklyn, back to Greensboro. Do Greensboro, Charlotte, and D.C. more often, actually. Because to me, if you're going to go to New York, you should go to the city. Now, I don't know if they're ever going to get Madison Square Garden. They're in there with the Big East. They're probably going to take a Herculean effort like a mug to go to the Madison Square Garden. That's where I think ACC wants to eventually end up more often than not. And especially the Saturday night championships from the Garden. But I think a rotation with Charlotte, just to be realistic, Greensboro, Charlotte, and Washington, D.C. That's your rotation. That's as perfect as a rotation as you can get because it's not too North Carolina centric, but the D.C. area is a whole lot. I mean, living there, Virginia Tech fans, UVA fans, even some people who went to Maryland still wish they were in the ACC are still there. So,
Yeah.
You got all that there. So that's why I think the rotation should be three cities. Maybe mix in Atlanta every once in a while, but really the core should be Greensboro, Charlotte, and Washington, D.C. I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, works for me.
I'll be okay with it. All right. That's it. So thank y'all for tuning in to tonight's podcast with great thanks to Jeff Fann and Matthew Warner. And Jeff, right quick, where can they find your ACC sports blog and your podcast right quick?
Yeah, you can find the blog at allsportsdiscussion.com, and we'll have when the podcast runs, it's posted there on that site. We usually have it each Sunday, posted on Monday, and you can find me on Twitter at Talkin' ACC Sports. And
Matthew, you can find you at Hokie Smash, right?
At Hokie Smash _ASD for the All Sports Discussion, right? And our site Twitter account is at AllSportsDACC. There
you go. So check those gentlemen out. They're great. They got great stuff for all things ACC. Like yours truly, big ACC fan. So go check those guys out. But anyway, thank y'all for tuning in tonight. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share, because sharing is caring. Please continue to check out my sports blog, www.theclowntimes.net. Go to cafepress.com to get the merch, source for the Clown Time Sports as well. Those links will be in the description. Underneath here, once I upload this to YouTube tomorrow. So until next time, please stay safe, stay warm, and enjoy this weekend of college basketball conference tournaments. Of course, start off with the ACC tournament. So take care, be safe. We out of here.